Good morning. On behalf of Innovaro, I'd like to welcome you to our Summer 2011 webinar for subscribers to Global Lifestyles and Technology Foresight. My name is Chris Carbone. I'm a director at Innovaro and oversee the Global Lifestyles and Tech Foresight projects. I'm joined by two co-presenters today, Kristen Noth and Matt Solenberger, who have been key analysts in these projects for many years. We're happy to be here today and to explore some of the key trends and factors that we see influencing the future of American families over the next decade. We want to thank you for joining us today. We know that sometimes it feels like things are going to slow down for us during the summer. They rarely do, so we appreciate you taking some time to participate in the session today. We have got an exciting lineup and agenda for you today, and we're going to cover a lot of ground. I'm going to lead off and set some of the context for the session, looking at some of the macro forces that we believe will influence family life in the next decade. Then we're going to hear from Kristen Noth, who will speak about emerging family types and some of the trends we're seeing related to marriage. We're then going to drill down a little bit into the topic of millennials and hear from Morley Winograd and Michael Hayes, the author of two books on millennials, Millennial Makeover and their upcoming book, Millennial Momentum, which is going to be published next month. After that, we'll hear back again from Innovaro. Matt Solenberger will help us look at some of the ways that new technology is being integrated into family life. And finally, we have a second guest presenter, Claudia Goffin, who is president and CEO of Target Latino, which is a multicultural marketing agency. She's going to help us explore the future of the Hispanic market, which, because of its size and the rapid growth, is really critical to understanding the sort of overall contours of the U.S. consumer and family landscape. At two times during this session, we're going to have the chance for our guest speakers and Innovaro team to respond to some questions. So please use the chat feature that you should see at the right side of your WebEx panel to type and send questions to us. You can do that throughout the session at any time. We'll capture these questions and answer as many as we can during the Q&As. With all that said, I'd like to get started by sharing a couple quick goals for the webinar. Firstly, we want to share some of the highlights from our recent research at Innovaro. We've always looked at trends related to families in our work, but given the numerous and interesting changes underway in U.S. family life, we thought it was important to focus a little bit more sharply on this. Secondly, we also tried to explore two groups that we think are going to have a distinct impact on the future of American family life over the next 10 years in our work recently, millennials and U.S. Latinos. So we want to learn from some great outside experts about these important groups. And finally, we want to explore and think creatively. We're going to start the conversation, of course, by talking about grounded trends that we see that are underway, things that are grounded in data. But we also really hope to get you all thinking about the future, about what these trends mean for the future of families and also for the future of your organizations. So to get started with our discussion, I'd like to highlight some of the big forces that we see and that we believe will set the context for American family life in the next decade. I like to think of these things sort of as the background music, if you will, that's going to be playing in the coming years as family life continues to evolve. Some of these are related to economic and resource challenges. There are, of course, demographic shifts both within the U.S. and at the global level that are setting the context for U.S. families. There are environmental and value shifts underway. There are going to be changes to the way that consumers engage with business and engage with each other, and changes in the power structure that follow from these. And clearly there are also going to be continued changes in the technology landscape. Given the time that we have and the topic of this webinar, I'd like to focus on 3 or 4 themes that we think are going to have particular relevance to families. So to jump in, I thought I'd start with some of the heavier material and then move on to trends that are a bit more upbeat. According to the official statistics, the recession has come and gone and ended in June 2009. But I think we all know that from looking beyond GDP at a wider range of measures, the post-recession environment is still definitely one of fear and uncertainty and cautious and deliberate mindset among consumers. The recession really forced American families to make significant changes in the way they live, and another thing that it did is it intensified some of the family-related trends that we've seen underway in previous years. So the recession intensified the boomeranging of young adults, adult children who after college or after a few years in the workforce or looking for jobs came back to live with their parents. Women have become even more important as breadwinners in American families in recent years, and many are are sole breadwinners for their families now due to the continued high unemployment for men. The economic situation also intensified some of the trends that we were seeing related to family formation in things that have been ongoing for years and years, further delaying marriage, delaying childbirth, because people feel insecure economically. And as Kristen's going to tell us a little bit later, certain groups more than others look at economic stability as a real precondition for entering into marriage. We expect that American families are going to continue to live with financial uncertainty, and it's going to be something that's going to be playing in the background again for many, many American families, at least in some way over the next decade. Jobs are probably the biggest issue on their minds, and some of the forecasts really do continue to paint the picture of a prolonged period of high unemployment. One study that did catch our eye recently is from McKinsey. It's called An Economy That Works, Job Creation in America's Future. It basically put forth three forecasts, three scenarios for job creation over the next 10 or so years. The scenarios range from 9.3 million jobs created to about 22 million jobs created. Unfortunately, it was only under this most optimistic or aggressive scenario that sees about 22 million jobs created that the U.S. gets back down to around 5% unemployment. And that wouldn't happen until 2018. So this implies we have kind of a long haul ahead of us, I think. Beyond the long-term issues such as job creation, there are also more acute things that are coming into play, such as the question of debt ceiling and the deficit. And these have real and measurable consequences in terms of consumers and consumer attitude. It's been interesting, I guess, to see this kind of high-level, inside-the-beltway issue like the debt ceiling have real impacts on consumer confidence. Goldman Sachs noted in a report just last week that consumer confidence fell more in recent weeks than they believe it should have, given the state of unemployment, given home prices, given the consumer lending environment. And the timing of the drop really coincided with the explosion in media coverage for the debt ceiling impasse. So what does this all mean for the future? Well, we do know from history that generations that have grown up in times of economic stress have generally tended towards greater fiscal responsibility and for example, taken on less debt in their life. So with the experience of the Great Recession, we think definitely millennials and even Generation Z, the generation after millennials, may tend towards greater fiscal caution as adults. Besides this sort of values-driven thrift, some future consumers may be more cautious with their money by necessity due to depressed earnings. There's been some solid research showing that income effects of entering the workforce during a recession can last for a decade or more. College grads who entered the job market during the 81-82 recession, as you see on the screen here, ended up with depressed earnings as many as 17 years after earning their degrees. And finally, I think, of course, a priority is going to be on saving for the foreseeable future. This is going to be especially true for boomers who have that unique financial stress of being sandwiched between aging parents and kids that are still often relying on them for support. And so we think that there's going to be a focus on savings. Many boomers are going to delay the shift out of work to either retirement or encore careers. And, they're going to focus on repairing their nest egg, and this is going to be a big part of family priorities in the coming years. Okay, I said I was going to try to get through some of the heavier topics early, and so here's the last one I want to talk about, and that's income inequality. Income inequality has been rising steadily in the U.S. in recent decades, and today we know from government figures that the top fifth of American households receive nearly 50% of all earned income, while the poorest fifth receives about 3.4%. What's interesting is that this makes the United States an outlier in the rest of World I, with an income gap that's closer to World II countries in South America or even some in Africa, rather than its World I peers like Australia or the countries of Western Europe. And the Great Recession didn't significantly interrupt this trend. In fact, during the worst phases of the downturn, the wealthiest 5% of Americans actually added slightly to their incomes, while all households at other income levels slipped lower. We do have a great report on this in the Global Lifestyles Knowledge Base. It was actually written by my co-presenter, Kristen Noth. It gives an in-depth look at the possible drivers of income inequality, the possible outcomes and futures for income inequality in the U.S., and I urge you to check that out.